And tonight we are doing the epic battle of Ezekiel 38 and the importance of this. But to get there, I need to lead you to that place. And I'm going to make you familiar with a term tonight called Gog and Magog. This term comes up a lot. And it does mean something because there was a son of Japheth. Remember Noah? You know, all of us trace back to Adam and Eve, but there was a lot of different branches of humans after Adam and Eve, especially given the fact that their one son, Cain, killed their other son, Abel. And so then God gave Eve another son named Seth, and probably a whole lot more. But the Bible doesn't tell you every name because it's only tracking the ones that matter for the biblical narrative. So Seth was the one who was raised up out of Eve instead of Abel, who was a righteous man. As a matter of fact, the first man ever saved after death is Abel. And so in that time, of course, the whole earth was populated. And then came to the time of the flood. The flood came, and only one man and his 3 daughters and his 3 sons. Was it sons? Yeah, sons and their wives. Their wives were on the ark. And so all of humanity traces back to this family. And then that family traces back to Adam. It's very important to understand that. And we're talking about the flood about 1,300 years or so after Adam and Eve. And what's really interesting is Adam lives almost to the time of the flood. So, you know, in those days, they didn't have Bibles. They had Bible stories, narratives. And they came from Adam and Eve, who had actual contact with God. So God has never left himself without a witness. And that's how he has made sure that there were prophets and there were people who he had spoke to on a first-hand basis. And that's how these stories have come to us, because God always keeps his message alive in every generation. So we're talking about Bible prophecy, which is suggesting not, you know, you could generically talk about Bible prophecy and be meaning just about every word in the Bible. But what we mean is futuristic prophecy, moving forward beyond where we even are today. But in the story tonight, we're going to go to a prophet named Ezekiel, which lands about 600 years before Jesus. And so in your mind, you got to realize that, you know, we're moving close to the time of Christ within 600 years for Ezekiel. And so some things are really true of that. You got to, in your mind, you got to put yourself in his era, because if Ezekiel is talking about Magog, then he's talking about something he presently knows what that means. Right? And so for us to interpret the Bible properly, we have to look at the prophet Ezekiel, talk about what's going on at the time that he's in, and realize what he means is what he knows he's talking about, not what we think it is later if we happen to misunderstand. And I'm going to teach you a very important principle tonight about Bible prophecy in regards to these things. So there was one of the sons of Noah was Japheth, and he had a son named Magog. Okay, so that's the beginning of the word Magog, but it's going to be important because in Revelation 20, verse 8, which is exactly a little more than 1,000 years from today, we don't know how much more, but some more than 1,000 years from today, Magog is brought up again. Okay, and that's going to be important for you to remember that I told you this, because I'm trying to give you and show you that this here truth is in the details. It's on the front here. This is the kind of thing you need to know about the Bible. It's so specific and it's so detailed that you can actually know what it means and get a moment when you read it, when you figure out the difference between one detail and another detail. And when you see the difference, then you know that can't mean this, it must mean something else. You see what I'm saying? So hopefully I'm going to be able to walk you through this in a way that is simple to understand and realize. So, but here it says, when God comes against the land of Israel, says the Lord, my fury will show in my face. What do you think that means? It's going to be obvious. It's going to be obvious, and you'll get a kick out of the picture I got of God with fury in his face. Somebody came up with a really good one. And so we are going to be talking about this tonight. So Remember, this is where we're at. We are in a series about Bible prophecy to give you fundamental, foundational things to know about it. And we've been talking about, is the present day Israeli people, the Jews, are they considered to God as God's people? Are they considered God's people in the Old Testament? Are they considered God's people in the New Testament? And we proved to you over the last 2 weeks, yes, indeed, God's people are that because God calls them that currently, New Testament, and previously Old Testament, right? So we got that message. So we're talking about these 4 things that make so much difference. The subject is the God of the Jews. His name is, well, we don't know how to say it because the Jews thought it was too ungodly and arrogant to say the name of God from their lips. So they put in the Bible YHWH, no vowels. We, in our cleverness, have made it Yahweh. There was a time that it was thought it was Jehovah. I hate that word because the Jehovah's Witnesses have reformed their whole Bible and made themselves the only people that are saved. And if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you're not saved. And they go around and they say, I am a witness to Jehovah. Well, if you go find out the truth about the word Jehovah, it is not in the Bible. It was created. It's even more, what's the word, imaginary than Yahweh, because we don't even know that Yahweh is the way God says his name. It's even more imaginary. And by the way, in Hebrew, there's no Jehovah. There's no Jah in it. And so I don't use the word Jehovah unless I slip from many years of being taught that word. And I did recently slip and use the word Jehovah one night, I remember. Yeah, it's terrible. But nevertheless, it doesn't matter in the long run because we're making both of these words up to sound the way we think they should. And so I'll admit that, and I'll tell you that, you don't want to get offended at someone who uses Jehovah unless they're Jehovah's Witnesses. The Jewish people is what we're centered on because right now today, the Jewish people are in the news all the time. Isn't it weird? Romanians, haven't heard about them in a long time. Samoans, don't ever hear much about them, except for Tulsi Gabbard, I think, who is a Samoan. And the Rock is, yeah, summer knew that. And Israel is also very important, and that is because the land of Israel was allotted to them 3,400 years ago. And then lastly, why Bible prophecy matters is because God's purposes, get this word, are unchanging. God's purposes and God himself is unchanging. So each of these things, these 4 very important issues, make up the whole of God's people and the significance of Israel and their certain prophesied future for the next 1,000+ years. We know there's always 1,000 because in Revelation, it says the millennial kingdom will last 1,000 years. You know how many times that's repeated in Revelation? 6 times. I tell you, God, when he repeats something, it's for a reason. And so when he repeats something over and over and over again, it's crazy that there's people called millennialist or amillennialist that don't believe in a millennial kingdom, and yet they totally make that a spiritual thing instead of a literal thing. Oh no, the Revelation is a book of symbols, and that's just a symbol. Nope, sorry. Symbols are always clear. They can't be literal. That's how you know it's a symbol. If you don't remember anything else I said about prophecy, that's a very, very big one. If it can't be literal, it is a symbol. Or if it could be literal, but the Bible says right after it, and this means this, then you know you just got a symbol. It's that simple. Revelation's full of symbols, but it goes, oh, the waters, that was people. Oh, he just told the story about water, and then you said, oh, that's the nations. Okay, so the water in that story means the nations. It doesn't mean water. It doesn't mean the ocean. It means the nation. in Revelation that does that. And always watch that when you read that book. Just watch for what the symbol is. Write in your Bible, water equals nations. Then all of a sudden it makes all the sense in the world. So, but what about Israel's enemies? This I want you to think about tonight. What about their enemies who hate them? You may not know or understand, like Vivek, I don't know if I can say his last name. He's like, I heard him talk about Israel, and he's like, yeah, you know what? I think we should supply weapons to Israel, but I don't think we should do anything else. And I'm thinking, yeah, here's a Hindu, doesn't know anything about why Christians might support Israel. And I'm thinking, well, there may be young people in my church that don't even know why we should support Israel. So that's why I want to say these things to you. So I can give you the biblical reason why you as an American citizen should vote for a president that supports Israel if you care about the future of your kids. Because the Bible has something to say about that. So the answer about this question about what about the enemies is relevant for how our United States is going to move forward, because how we treat Israel will be as relevant to our future being good or bad as it was for all the people in the Bible who hated Israel, and we see what happened to them and why. So as we're going to see tonight, those who treat Israel with contempt, and there's a lot of people saying this now. Candace Owens, I wouldn't listen to her for 3 minutes now. Candace Owens has shown me she's a completely ignorant person who does not claims Christianity but converted to Catholic. Everything she's doing is going backwards. Now she's a Catholic, and she's out there banging on Israel as much as she can. Don't listen to her. Don't let her influence you or your kids. She is going backwards. And I'm going to show you today. Holding contempt for the Jews brings the curses of God. Let's make sure that I'm not just making this up. Let's go to Genesis 12, 1 through 3 and have my fantastic Bible reader, Mike, read it.
The Lord had said to Abram, leave your native country, your relatives, and your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who treat you with contempt. All the families on the earth will be blessed through you.
Need I say more? Say, well, no, that was to Abraham. No. It's to everyone proceeding from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the nation of Israel. So, little tiny verse that if you know it or you don't, Candace Owens, you're going to suffer the consequences of Almighty God for holding the Jews in contempt. Now, do the Jews do things that are contemptible? Every human does things that are contemptible. I'll raise my hand. I've done it. Should we hate people who are contemptible? No, we shouldn't hate people. We should hate Satan. We should hate sin, and we should hate suffering caused by it. But let's not forget, we too are sinners. That's why you can't take the Bible, make it your standard for other people, and not put it on yourself. Because first and foremost, it's harder for you to be good than it is for the people that live in your house. Because it's easier to point your finger at someone than it is to point it back at yourself. Look at Ezekiel 28, and I want to show you the beginning of this. Ezekiel 28, 20 through 24. Michael.
Then another message came to me from the Lord. Son of man, turn and face the city of Sidon, today in Lebanon, and prophesy against it. Give the people of Sidon this message from the sovereign Lord. I am your enemy, O Sidon.
Why is God saying to those people that aren't even his people, I'm your enemy? And that's why I wanted to make sure you knew Sidon was in Lebanon. Lebanon is what you see when you stand in northern Israel. Lebanon is where half of all the horror is going on in Israel right now. They're shooting from Lebanon. Look at the top of the map there, where orange is it orange? Whatever color that is Israel. Looking down the West Bank, that's where the Palestinians gather, and that's where they are. There's lots of problem coming from that. Gaza, what they're trying to get under control. Below Gaza and Israel on the bottom is Egypt. And so please understand, there's a reason God says, I'm against you, and it's because Sidon, who don't believe in that God, says I'm against Israel. Watch.
And I will reveal my glory by what I do to you, when I bring judgment against you and reveal my holiness among you. Everyone watching will know that I am the Lord. I will send a plague against you, and blood will be spilled in your streets. The attack will come from every direction, and your people will lie slaughtered within your walls. Then everyone will know that I am the Lord. No longer will Israel's scornful neighbors prick and tear at her like briars and thorns, for then they will know that I am the sovereign Lord.
Now this is prophetic. Look at that. The neighbors prick and tear. That's taking the analogy of a thorn and what it does to you. It tears your clothes if you get into thorns. It tears your skin. They're constantly doing this to Israel, And then when Israel wants to defend itself, then it's like, oh no, you genocidal people. Now, I know there's a rumor that there's some kind of video that shows Israeli soldiers raping some Palestinians. That is not the norm, if it's even true. If it's true, I want to just put something in your head here to think about this. If you had people come into your mom and dad or your brother and sister's children and rape the women and the children, and you weren't saved, you didn't even believe in God, what would you want to do to them? You'd want to pay them back. You'd want to do the same thing to them. So before you even judge horrendous acts that are not justifiable, don't think for a moment that you wouldn't think like that if you didn't have a moral compass. I know when I'm offended, my brain comes up with all kinds of ways to get revenge. And they're not godly. That's when I have to ask myself, am I going to be a Christian or not? Because when you're mad, you'll do almost anything. So don't get on a high horse and think, oh, yeah, just another opportunity to slam the Jews. And I don't think we should do that, especially knowing what we're finding out here with the scripture. So what God is going to do is he is going to show them, and notice here every time it says, I am the Lord, that word Lord, did you notice it's in lowercase capital letters? L-O-R-D means Yahweh. Y-H-W-H. That's what that stands for. So when you see I am the Lord, he's saying you will know that I am the only God that exists. My name is Yahweh. It's not your gods who you think exist. It's one God, and I'm the one, and you're going to know I am he. All right, going to the next one, Ezekiel 28, 25 through 26. By the way, the book of Ezekiel has almost 10 chapters devoted to the future of Israel, God's people. This is the book that really is just beautiful in its tone. And remember too, he is one of the prophets who were taken out of Israel, exiled. So he's someone that's already in the exile. So don't think, these guys that say, oh no, God turned against Israel because they broke all of their covenant with God, so he's moved on to the church. No. These prophecies come after they rejected the covenants of God and didn't serve the Lord. That is bogus timing. Ezekiel 28:25.
This is what the sovereign Lord says. The people of Israel will again live in their own land, the land I gave my servant Jacob. For I will gather them from the distant lands where I have scattered them. I will reveal to the nations of the world my holiness among my people. They will live safely in Israel and build homes and plant vineyards. And when I punish the neighboring nations that treated them with contempt, they will know that I am the Lord their God.
They will know that the God of Israel is the God of Israel, and they are his people. So here we have a beautiful picture of ultimately Israel gaining complete victory over all the nations. That word too is Gentiles every time in the Hebrew. And that word is saying that all who hate Israel of the Gentiles are going to find out when God makes his holiness known. I don't know if you get it when he says that word holiness, But when God says that, it means he will set himself apart from all other gods who people think are gods, and he will show that he alone is God. Holiness means separate. That's why we talk about, as Christians, we're to live in holiness, and that is we're not to live like the world. We're not to think like the world. We're to be different, exclusive. God's people by our action. That's what God is saying about himself. Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 1. Watch this. This is great. This is the first part of verse 1. Then we're going to read 6 through 8.
These are the words that Moses spoke to all the people of Israel while they were in the wilderness east of the Jordan River. They were camped in the Jordan Valley. Verse 6. When we were at Mount Sinai, the Lord our God said to us, "You have stayed at this mountain long enough. It is time to break camp and move on. Go to the hill country of the Amorites and to all the neighboring regions, the Jordan Valley, the hill country, the western foothills, the Negev, and the coastal plain. Go to the land of the Canaanites and to Lebanon, and all the way to the great Euphrates River. Look, I am giving you all this land to you. Go in and occupy it, for it is the land the Lord swore to give to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to all their descendants."
Amazing. Amazing. So here I wanted to show you that when God brought Israel out of Egypt, and he wanted them, if you read this whole chapter, it says they should have got there in 11 days. It took them 40 years because they refused. When they got to this place, they refused to go in, saying, no, you brought us here to kill us. And so that made God angry with them, and he let every one of them die except for the 2 spies that went in, Joshua and Caleb, and said, we can take the land, 2 with faith. The rest of them didn't have the faith. This beautiful picture of Moses looking out here over the valley into Israel's land, which was then called Canaan's land, is what God began to do. And if you notice, if you know much about Israel, we were talking a little while ago about Sidon and Lebanon. That isn't Israel today, but it is Israel that was given to them. You saw it right there. They are going to get the land all the way to Lebanon. That means that whoever's living in Lebanon don't belong there. Israel belongs there. And when Christ comes, they're going to get booted. And Israel's going to be planted in the whole of the land, which has never happened before, which you just saw described right here. It is going to be far bigger than it is right now. And no one's going to dispute it and say, no, we were there first. Doesn't make any difference. God put it there. It belongs to him, and he gave it to Israel. Okay, going on to Deuteronomy 8:18 through 20.
Remember the Lord your God. He is the one who gives you power to be successful in order to fulfill the covenant he confirmed to your ancestors with an oath. But I assure you of this, if you ever forget the Lord your God and follow other gods, worshiping and bowing down to them, you will certainly be destroyed, just as the Lord has destroyed other nations in your path. You also will be destroyed if you refuse to obey the Lord your God.
Okay, so this is what happened. This is what happened. They did get destroyed. You've got to think about 2 empires that don't exist today. Okay, there's 2 empires that destroyed Israel. Israel, because of their sin and not following God and fighting with each other, which is always a bad sign, Israel was divided in half. The lower half at Jerusalem and below was called Judah. The upper half chose Samaria as a city, and they called that Israel. In the prophets, when you're reading the major and minor prophets in the end of your Old Testament, you are hearing from how Israel collapsed. The top half, Israel, was taken over by the Assyrians. And they were removed, exiled, all of them out of Israel, the northern half of Israel. Where is Assyria today? The answer is it doesn't exist. Why? Because they took Israel. Remember the principle I showed you? If they curse you, I will curse them. Later, 100 years or so later, a place called Babylon, way far from Israel, decided to come and destroy the southern part of Israel, which was called Judah. Where is Babylon today? Non-existent. And I might add, the same thing will be true of these United States. The minute that we curse Israel and give them over to their enemies. That's why it matters what's going to happen in this election coming up this year. It is absolutely going to be the end of the U.S. if the current administration gets another extension, because they don't approve of Israel. They treat them like all other nations. They want, even though they're the best ally we have over there in the Middle East, really the only one that's a true ally. And yet we're going to treat, I heard Sister Biden, I heard her talking about what she's going to do with Israel, but the Palestinians, you can't make Israel just one of another nation. Other nations, it doesn't work that way. They are special. Oh, that makes people mad when you say that. They are God's people. That's why they are special. And whether the world recognizes it or not, the church better recognize it, or they don't read their Bible and they won't vote right. If you know a Christian's going to vote for the Democrats who kill babies, they're not Christians. That's not a Christian. That's people with blood on their hands. It's not possible. It's not possible. So it's very important to understand these things from a biblical worldview. Now I'm going to give you some observations from the author, Salem Kerben. He's a neat guy that was alive, I don't know when he died, but I'm pretty sure he's dead. He did a great prophecy study Bible, and I highly recommend it. If you are into prophecy, he would answer most of your questions in the footnotes of all the Bible's prophecies. Here's what he says. Ezekiel chapter 34 through 39 reveals God's promises to his people Israel. And at the time of Ezekiel, these promises were all in the distant future. At the time of Ezekiel's prophetic ministry, Israel had already been conquered and exiled to Babylon. That means that not only was the northern Israel conquered, because that was 100 or so years before, then lower Israel, which is Judah, southern Israel, was conquered, and Ezekiel was one of those hauled off and captured and taken to Babylon, and that's where he writes us from, okay? Israel is a tiny strip of land, listen to this, 165 miles long and 50 miles wide, yet more battles have been fought over this land and its possession than any other land in human history. Jerusalem has been besieged 46 times. It has been conquered 17 times. Biblically, this is the most important real estate on the planet, according to what God says about it. Now, after the Babylonian exile, now try to follow me here. I know this is difficult to imagine, but I'm just trying to give you a visual overview of what happens. Okay, so let's go back to Abraham. That's the first Jew, okay? Now let's move forward from Abraham. What is the big thing that happens later is the people of Israel, there was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob and his 12 sons, which are the 12 tribes of Israel, they move into Egypt because of a famine in the land. Who caused the famine in the land? Who controls that? God. He's the one who sends rain and withholds it, the Bible says. So he did a purposeful thing. He made them uncomfortable so they would grow in their Christianity, like I said at the beginning tonight. He made them suffer a little while so they would be willing to move on. And they moved out and moved to Egypt because God had prepared the way for them by sending Joseph to Egypt. Joseph is a type of Christ. So they're in Egypt, and they're there for 400 plus years, almost 500 years in Egypt. Wow, that's a long time. Many generations come and go, come and go. They don't know anything about Moses yet. He hasn't been born. When he is born, he grows up. He has to turn 80, and then at 80, God calls him to start a church. And so at 80, he pulls them out of Egypt through all those plagues, 10 plagues, and he ends up taking them to the edge of where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were from, where God gave them the land. And now they're like probably 2.5 million strong, and they're going to march into the land after 40 years. And after 40 years, they march into the land under Joshua. And then what happens? I'm going to zoom now. We're talking from that time. Now we're going to move to the kings. Finally, Israel is in their land. They've subjected it to their rule. Israel is a nation. And they have a first king. What's his name? Saul. And then Saul doesn't serve the Lord properly. God replaces him with David. Now we've moved 1,000 years from Abraham. The reign of David has moved us ahead 1,000 years. David has a son. Who's his name? Solomon reigns. That's the highest Israel ever got in history, under Solomon's reign. Solomon reigns for 40 years. So David 40 years, Saul. Let's go back. Saul 40 years, David 40 years, Solomon 40 years. And then the next one was Rehoboam, Solomon's son. So Solomon's son is now around 1,100 years in from Abraham. And here is where it all falls apart. He's an idiot. He doesn't follow wisdom, gray-haired advice. He follows the advice of 20-year-olds. And the 20-year-olds caused him to have the division of Israel, which made it Judah and Israel divided in half. That's where the downward spiral happens. Now, remember, we're at 1,100 years in past Abraham, the beginning of the Jews. 1,100 years in there, now you just move forward. 400 years, again, it's funny how this 490 years pops up every once in a while in Israel. 490 years later, where are they at? They're all out of their land again. They're all gone. The Assyrians took them out. The Babylonians took them out. And when they took them out of Babylon, remember he told Jeremiah, you're going to be gone for 70 years. And then Daniel read Jeremiah saying 70 years, and he read it at about 68 years later. And he goes, oh my God, I got to seek you. What are we going to do? We're getting to that point to where you said we would only be gone for 70 years. And then Israel is going to move back, but not as a whole. They have never moved back as a whole until our day. It hasn't happened. And even now, they're in the process of all of them moving back. Remember what he said about if you're going to grow spiritually, you're going to have suffering. To get the Jews out of the United States, which half of them live here, guess what? Anti-Semitism is coming. It's here, but it's going to get much worse. To the point they're going to fear for their life, and they're going to get a plane ticket to Israel, and they're going to move back there. That is what has to happen. That's why I'm really scared about our election coming up, because I know that's what's coming if certain person wins in this election that wears a dress once in a while. Very, very crazy. So let's think. You might say, no. Jesus came 2,000 years ago and Israel was there as a nation. No, they weren't. They were there. It was called Israel. They weren't their own boss, though. The Romans were the dominant nation over Israel there. They were a sub-nation. They had not regained their nation. 70 AD, you guys know 32 AD, Jesus crucified. Some think 33, but one of the two. 32 AD is what I think. He was crucified, right? 70 AD, 32 to 70, 30-some years. There was another complete destruction, this time by the Romans. Where's the Roman Empire today? Non-existent. Go after the Jews, you get cursed. Go after the Jews, you will end your days. I'm really trying to show you why it matters what we do politically in the United States. If we want to be in existence for the next 100 years, we cannot curse Israel and get away with it. So, really important to understand, under Jesus' time in Israel, they were not their own nation. Yeah, they had a temple. Yeah, they had all this stuff. They were there as Jews, but only subjects to the Roman Empire. The first real return to the land of Israel, and I got this from Salem Kerbin's study Bible, was in 1881. That's very recent. 1881 to 1900. This is called in Hebrew the Aliyah, A-L-L-Y-A, the Aliyah, which means to go up, because to the Jews, the highest mountain in the world is in Jerusalem, because God has made it Zion. So whether it is or not, it isn't, but it is because God has named it as such. And someday it will be in the millennial kingdom, because there's going to be a complete revamping of land when Jesus Christ comes back by a worldwide earthquake. We'll talk more about that at another time. So, since this is happening in the Aliyah, only about 30,000 Jews from Russia came to Israel. This is like planting the seed of the future, right? 30,000 Jews came. Now, this is no gathering up from all the nations. Obviously, it came from Russia. And so that was the first real return to Israel in that day. The second Aliyah was in 1904 to 1919, and another 32,000 Jews came and moved there from Russia. And then the third Aliyah was in 1924 to 31. This is when my mom and dad were born, in this era. And 78,000 Polish Jews migrated to Israel. Why am I telling you this? I'm showing you that these migrations were not the biblical prophecy Ezekiel migrations. Because when God talks about it happening for the very end, he's saying they're coming from every nation, not just this one and that one. That's the point. The fourth Aliyah happened in 1933 to 39. World War II comes to mind. Look at how it speeded up at that time. 230,000 Jews fled Germany and Hitler's fury to escape to Israel. And then the fifth, and of course, there isn't a nation called Israel at the time. They just have their land there, but it's called Palestine because that's what the British called it. The fifth Aliyah happened in 1940 to 1948, when 95,000 Jews escaped from Central Europe and migrated to Israel, then called Palestine. So here's the thing. Now we're looking at how accumulative all of this is happening, and all of a sudden it's like from everywhere, here come the Jews. And so over that period of time, in 1948, May 14, 1948, Israel becomes a nation, and they have now 650,000 Jews living there. Now, compare that to the 6 million that were killed leading up to this in those years of the World War II that Hitler killed them and many other people. But of course, as a race, they were the ones focused on mostly as a group. So what happened there is that another key I did not know till a few weeks ago, I think I might have shared it with you. I found out that the rabbis believe Abraham was born in 1948 BC and Israel was reborn in 1948 AD. Isn't that amazing? Say, oh, well, good coincidence. Well, give you another date. The first temple of Solomon was destroyed on the same day that hundreds of years later, after Jesus, the second temple was destroyed on the same day. That's why when Israel has this holiday to mourn, which we just passed a week or two ago, the destruction of their temples, boom, same exact day on the Jewish calendar. Unbelievable. These are not coincidences. God is leaving a trail. When you attack Israel and you don't exist anymore, there's a reason. He promised that would be the case. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are not dead in heaven. They're alive. They are beholding the face of God as we speak. God is looking at them. They're looking at God and they're saying, you're a God who is faithful, as a song we sang tonight, to your promises. You're a promise keeper. Ezekiel chapters, let's see. I'm sorry, I think I have a duplicate on my slide here. Yeah. Hold on one second. Sometimes I duplicate myself. All right. Ezekiel 37. Now, this is important. This is important because this has happened to come to pass. This is a prophecy that came to pass in your mother and father's lifetime, probably. If not, your grandpa's lifetime. My dad and mom saw this happen. Go ahead, Mike, and read 37, 1 through 6.
The Lord took hold of me, and I was carried away by the Spirit of the Lord to a valley filled with bones. He led me all around among the bones that covered the valley floor. They were scattered everywhere across the ground and were completely dried out. Then he asked me, Son of man, can these bones become living people again? O sovereign Lord, I replied, you alone know the answer to that. Then he said to me, speak a prophetic message to these bones and say, dry bones, listen to the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Look, I am going to put breath into you and make you live again. I will put flesh and muscles on you and cover you with skin. I will put breath into you and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord.
I want you to go to the next slide and keep reading because everything is going to be explained here, and then I may go backwards to that slide.
Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones represent the people of Israel. They are saying, we have become old, dry bones. All hope is gone. Our nation is finished. Therefore prophesy to them and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. O my people, I will open your graves of exile and cause you to rise again. Then I will bring you back to the land of Israel. When this happens, O my people, you will know that I am the Lord. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live again and return home to your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done what I said. Yes, the Lord has spoken.
If you take the time to do some homework and read this through the whole chapter, you'll find that those bones in front of Ezekiel came together. So they were scattered bones. They were so dead for so long that the finger and the hand and the leg were not even together. And while he watched, it's really significant to understand this. The bones assembled themselves into complete human skulls and bones as complete bodies before his eyes. And then the next step was meat came, or muscle came upon the bones, and then they were human beings again, but they were not yet alive. And then God breathes into them, and guess what? When he breathes, they come to life just like Adam did when God formed Adam. But what this whole thing is saying is that God can take this impossible situation where one Jew's in one nation, another one's over here, this one married outside of Judaism, and he's like, I can assemble this whole nation back together, and I can draw them back together, which is the example of the bones being scattered and then coming together. Remember, these bones represent the whole nation as a group, and they aren't together yet until they actually are together in the land of Israel again. This is the thing that should just make you so happy that you have a Bible and God has given you the understanding to see how he has foretold the future from a man 600 BC all the way to 1948 AD in our time, that over those 2,600 years, he spoke something that did nothing until 1948 or right before 1948. So what I just went through to show you, 1881, the beginning of them returning from Russia to their land, that was one of the leg bones being attached to the hip bone. That was this slow assembly of these bones. And even today, they are there, but they're not alive spiritually. So therefore, don't judge them because they act like the heathen, because mostly they are atheists. Mostly they believe in Judaism as a tradition, but not by faith. They're not saved yet. They're not breathing yet because God has not blown the breath of life upon them. But the exciting thing is, this is in transition while we speak about it. And if we know that is happening, then God bless Israel. God bless those Jews that are being gathered together in that nation, because you're getting ready to breathe on them like you breathed on me the day that I was born again. And I am no more better than them before Jesus than they are. But I know that you're going to do it because you have purpose to do this for Israel. Let's go to Zechariah chapter 12, verses 1 through 3.
This message concerning the fate of Israel came from the Lord. This message is from the Lord, who stretched out the heavens, laid the foundations of the earth, and formed the human spirit. I will make Jerusalem like an intoxicating drink that makes the nearby nations stagger when they send their armies to besiege Jerusalem and Judah. On that day, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock. All the nations will gather against it to try to move it, but they will only hurt themselves.
You're seeing this right now. Hamas is almost no more. They're dying by the hundreds. Hezbollah, dying by the hundreds. Is Jerusalem moving? Not moving. I love this picture right here. I will make Jerusalem a rock that is unmovable. Pray for Jerusalem, but even if you don't, it ain't going anywhere. But we're Christian, and we've been told to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And that's why I want the United States, my government, to do everything possible to help Israel maintain peace. I can't pray for peace and then be against our government helping them get that peace. Does that make sense? This is the will of God. On that day, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock. That day is now. We're in that day. It's just beginning. It just started in 1948. But guess what? It is in the process because God is getting ready to bring all of the Jews back to their land. So now this leads us to today, the looming war that is being planned as I speak this message. I want to take you to Ezekiel 38. And when we get here, we're going to look tonight at Ezekiel 38, maybe not get to 39 because we're not too good on time. We got about 15 minutes left, but we are going to do as much as we can. I want you to see this. It's beautiful. Let's go to the first one. It is Ezekiel 38, 1 through 5.
That's a cool pic.
Yeah, there's God with fury in his face.
This is another message that came to me from the Lord. Son of man, turn and face Gog in the land of Magog, the prince who rules over the nations of Meshach and Tubal.
So just remember, when you hear Gog, that means the leader of Magog. Magog, the son of Japheth. So if you go in history like theologians have done and see where did his descendants end up, then you'll know what we're talking about today, because there's no Magog today. So we're going to find out where that is that they ended up. Japheth's son, Magog, and his descendants, they are known to have migrated. They were Scythians or Scythians, depending on how you want to say it. These were the people. Here's why it matters, because it's going to list a bunch of different names that were very relevant in Ezekiel's day. These places exist today, but not by these names. I want to show you where they are. Go ahead.
And prophesy against them. Give him this message from the sovereign Lord. Gog, I am your enemy. I will turn you around and put hooks in your jaws to lead you out with the whole army, your horses and your charioteers in full armor, and a great horde armed with shields and swords. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya will join you too, with all their weapons.
All right, Persia, you need to really remember this. Persia is just Iran. If you talk to anybody from Iran, they don't say I'm Iranian. They say I'm Persian. That's what they are known by to this day, Persian. Ethiopia, there's Ethiopia on the map. Libya's on the map. These are all Muslim nations. Ezekiel 38 is about Muslim nations joining together to come down from the north and destroy Israel. Wait till you just look at the news and you'll see this is all forming as we speak. Going to the next slide, verses 6 through 9.
Gomer and all its armies will also join you, along with the armies of Beth Togarmah from the distant north and many others. Get ready, be prepared. Keep all the armies around you mobilized and take command of them. A long time from now, you will be called into action.
Now, notice that long time from now shows you it's the last days he's talking about. It's not now. It's not in the near future. It's a long time. And let me tell you, if God says long time, It's really long. If he says soon, like he said in Revelation, I'm coming soon. That was 2,000 years ago. Just to give you a hint. Go ahead.
In the distant future, you will swoop down on the land of Israel, which will be enjoying peace after recovering from war and after its people have returned from many lands to the mountains of Israel.
Let me just posit an idea for you to look for. This looks like it could be what's getting ready to happen. Israel may completely destroy their enemies in this war they're in now, and they may start to feel comfortably peace and safety and relax again. I really believe that is the next thing that we'll see. And when you see Israel safe again, then you know how close we are to this actually happening. Keep going.
You and all your allies, a vast and awesome army, will roll down on them like a storm and cover the land like a cloud.
All right, verses 10 through 12.
This is what the sovereign Lord says. At that time, evil thoughts will come to your mind, and you will devise a wicked scheme. You will say, Israel is an unprotected land filled with unwalled villages. I will march against her and destroy these people who live in such confidence. I will go to those formerly desolate cities that are now filled with people who have returned from exile in many nations. I will capture vast amounts of plunder, for the people are rich with livestock and other possessions now. They think the whole world revolves around them.
I have heard the enemies of Israel say that very line. They think the whole world revolves around them. I've heard people saying that now, today, that they think that of Israel and the Jews that live here in the United States. Going to the next slide, 13, we're just reading right out of the same chapter, Ezekiel 38, 13 through 16a.
But Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish will ask, do you really think
Let me interject here. Sheba and Dedan are the Arab countries down south. Sheba and Dedan are the Arabs down south. Keep that in mind.
Do you really think the armies you have gathered can rob them of silver and gold?
Why is this significant? Because they don't join in the destruction of Israel. If you go back and listen to the news on YouTube of when Israel was attacked by Iran and they sent 300 drones and missiles at Israel in one night, guess who helped them? The Arab countries helped them and helped shoot down some of those missiles, let them use their airspace, all these things. They were allied with Israel. This is telling you here they don't turn against Israel in this process. Okay?
Do you think you can drive away their livestock and seize their goods and carry off plunder?
The Arabs are saying this to those nations who are trying to come take Israel's plunder. That's who they're talking to.
Therefore, Son of Man, prophesy against Gog. Give him this message from the sovereign Lord. When my people are living in peace in their land, then you will rouse yourself. You will come from your homeland in the distant north with your vast cavalry and your mighty army, and you will attack my people Israel, covering their land like a cloud. At that time in the distant future.
Distant future. This is not then when it was given. It was a long time to come. But here we are 2,600 years later, and these people are getting together. I'm going to show you on a map in just a second. All right, 16b through 19.
I will bring you against my land as everyone watches, and my holiness will be displayed by what happens to you, Gog. Then all the nations will know that I am the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord asks. Are you the one I was talking about long ago when I announced through Israel's prophets that in the future I would bring you against my people? But this is what the sovereign Lord says. When Gog invades the land of Israel, my fury will boil over. In my jealousy and blazing anger, I promise a mighty shaking in the land of Israel on that day.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, let's go to the next one. I think this might be the last one, 20 through 23.
All living things, the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the animals of the fields, the small animals that scurry along the ground, and all the people on earth will quake in terror at my presence. Mountains will be thrown down, cliffs will crumble, walls will fall to the earth. I will summon the sword against you on all the hills of Israel, says the sovereign Lord. Your men will turn their swords against each other. I will punish you and your armies with disease and bloodshed. I will send torrential rain, hailstones, fire, and burning sulfur. In this way, I will show my greatness and holiness, and I will make myself known to all the nations of the world. Then they will know that I am the Lord.
Wow. Wow. This is so amazing. I'm going to close this session with an explanation of these places so you can see them on the map. So we're going to go to the map here now, and I'm going to explain to you where these all are. So you see Israel in the middle of this map. These are currently what the nations are called, not in Ezekiel's time, in our time right now, okay? So this was the nations and where the people that Ezekiel was talking about existed in that day. That's what matters. In order to interpret Bible prophecy right, you got to know back in the time of the prophecy, and then what they were talking about is what's relevant, not what we would impose on it today. And there's some good examples of this. So the first one you'll see here is Magog. Okay, Magog's a big name that we'll talk more about not only tonight, but next week, because we're out of time tonight. Magog is the stands, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, there's a bunch of them. This is where those people that came from Japheth migrated, that later they were known as Scythians. So this is in the north of Israel to the east, right? And they're up there on the other side of Iran, which is the number one enemy today of Israel. All right, let's go to the next one. And that one is Russia, okay? What is Russia? Rosh. So this is the name given by Ezekiel, Rosh. And I'm not going to take the time to prove to you that these things are true. I'm just going to tell you, this information, it was sorted out by Andy Woods, who is like one of the top Bible prophecy teachers of our day. And he has a book called Middle East Meltdown. So if you want to know the details, do that. I just want to tell you the bottom line when I'm teaching this. I don't have time to teach you those kind of details since I only get you once a week. The next one is Tubal and Meshech. Both of those exist today in modern Turkey. So look at Turkey. It is what's right above Israel. And there's something you need to know about Turkey. And that is Turkey was the southern portion of the Roman Empire that stretched from Turkey all the way to Rome. And so that was their southern portion. And as a matter of fact, when Rome started coming down, it last existed in Turkey. Why does that matter? Because the revived Roman Empire is going to play a key role in the time of the Antichrist. And so you'll need to remember that Turkey will be a big player even during the Great Tribulation, because the Antichrist is going to be reviving the old Roman Empire, okay? And then we go to the next one, which is Persia. I've already told you that's Iran. And they are key enemies to Israel today, probably the greatest. They're the ones funding all the other things that are going on. And then there's Cush. And Cush is modern Sudan. So if you look down to the south, there you have Cush. And there was a time, if I got this right, there was a time that they thought Ethiopia was Cush, but come to find out that really got changed, and the real Cushites didn't really live where Ethiopia is today. It was in the Sudan. All right, and then the next one is Put, which is Libya, which is already Libya today. It's still Libya today. So as we go through this, the last one is Gomer and Togarmah. And these two also exist in Turkey today. So as a country, Turkey covers several of these 9 places that are mentioned in Ezekiel. As we go to the next slide, here is a comparison of the one I've been showing you and a new one to look at. I want you to see Israel again in this one that is so small, and see how she's completely surrounded by these people. These are not only surrounding her, almost adjacent to her, but these are all Muslim countries. That's very significant. Now you might say, what about Russia? Is Russia Muslim? The stands are Muslim, and southern Russia is Muslim. This week there was a big thing in the news of Putin meeting with the Muslim leadership, kissing the Quran, naming it the peaceful religion, like George Bush did during 9/11 or after. It's amazing. What they're saying is the opposite of the truth. There is no religion more terrorist-minded than Muslim religion. But, of course, they want to sell it as the peaceful religion. It's kind of like Kamala saying she's going to cut taxes. Don't ever believe it. It's not going to happen. Her dog will get his taxes cut. That's about it. That's how that'll go. So here's the deal. Ezekiel 38, as I just wrap up my comments, is this. Russia, Iran, Turkey, Libya, Sudan, they're already in alliance. These things have been coming together in the last few years. They were never allied, but now they are. They go to Russia. The Palestinian leadership has been to Russia. They've been to Iran. Russia is taking and putting munitions in Libya and Sudan. All of this. Turkey said if Israel don't back off, that they're going to invade Israel. In the last 6 weeks, Turkey saying we're going to invade Israel. Ezekiel 38 says that Turkey's going to invade Israel. It says this vast army is going to come from the north, and they're going to move in on the land of Israel. What I'm going to do next week is I'm going to talk to you about the 3 different wars that include the people called Magog. So you need to know that Magog is something that's brought up more than once about different times of different wars. People that don't know anything about prophecy and they try to teach on it, they just tell you this war is the Armageddon, and the Armageddon happens right before Jesus comes. And they simplify it like that. I'm going to prove to you next week as we read Revelation 20 after the millennial kingdom that Gog and Magog are back to come and destroy Israel again. You can't simplify this and make it one war. It's actually 3 different wars. One before the Armageddon, then the Armageddon, which will also be this same routine at the end of the 7-year tribulation. And then after 1,000 years of Christ's reign, Satan will be loosed again. Read Revelation 20, and he comes along. Gog, Magog show up in the Bible again. But this time it doesn't mean these nations. It means all nations. So completely different circumstances. And pretty soon you see when you're talking about the armies of Satan, they are called Gog and Magog. Gog, the leader, Magog, the country, the people. And it doesn't matter in the end in Revelation where they're from. We don't need to go through this rigmarole for that battle because it's all nations are going to turn against Israel again, but they're not going to succeed. So that is our study for tonight. So let's bow our heads and pray. Lord, thank you for our time together tonight. I pray that you will be with us, bless us, make us sharp when it comes to Bible prophecy so that we can anticipate the return of the Lord for the church, the condition of what's coming in the world so that we will be motivated to get people saved, to witness about our life of Christ, that you have made us privileged citizens of heaven. And Lord, I pray that you will encourage everyone that we talk to about you so that they can see the truth. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for joining us on our Fathom Ministries podcast. If this ministry has been beneficial to you in your walk with the Lord, please consider a monthly donation to our ministry effort by clicking on the donate button in the description of this video or podcast. To find out more about Fathom Ministries Church, please join us at fathomministrieschurch.com. Thank you for listening and supporting this ministry.